Hi everybody and welcome to our, what is in theory our second podcast, videocast for Conversation Aviation, but obviously if you've been following what happened last week, we had a few technical issues, guys, didn't we? So this is in theory the first official one, and I'm joined by my fantastic hosts. Can you introduce yourselves?
Hi.
Chris, you want to go first? I see. We, as much as we try and organise this, it's always the way. Who's going first? Which order? Chris, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, thanks, John. Morning, everyone, and thanks to everyone on the panel for giving their time for this one. I'm Chris. I've been working with John for a while in the team at EASA on the Together for Safety team, and prior to that, and currently on the collaborative analysis group for human factors and safety management. So really interested in the topics that for this Conversation Aviation series today. So that's me. Hi.
Thanks, Claudio.
Hi everybody, and I'm the head of the TC Alliance. It's a collaborative group of over 40 training consultancy organisations working together. And just like Chris, we've been working with John and the EASA team at Together for Safety promotional items over the last year. And it's great to be on here and just discuss all the issues that the industry is having and seeing how we can solve them.
And I think that's one of the interesting things, we were talking about a little bit before we started and hit the record button here, is that there's these, there's so many different organisations going through so many different challenges at the moment that actually, hopefully we can at least start a discussion, kind of just to get out there some of the things that you might be afraid, people might not be afraid to ask, but might think, oh, well, this is a bit of a silly question, or maybe I shouldn't be asking that. I don't know. Have you heard that a lot, Chris and Claudio, from as you've been talking to people?
I've heard it quite a lot, and it's interesting because people think that sometimes some aspects are too trivial or too basic, and therefore they don't have the opportunity to make, or culturally it's too sensitive to go and ask another airline or another operator what the answers might be. But at the end of the day, we're all here for aviation safety, and if another organisation has an answer, why not adopt that answer? Why rewrite the rule books? Why waste time and effort? Why can we not just get together and find solutions together? And that's part of what we want to do, because we realise that a lot of people, they want to actually go out and start these conversations, they just don't know how. So hopefully we can find a solution for that.
Yeah, Chris, have you seen that as well as you've been talking to people?
Yeah, absolutely. I did a series of discussions with people leading up to these sessions, and the same problems exist. Obviously, we're doing the same thing. We're flying people and cargo around networks and routes, and obviously the challenge of ramp up as well from post-COVID is causing all sorts of stresses and strains on people, but and on systems as well. So we can sit in our offices and be heads down trying to fix problems that we think are unique to us, but you know that it's happening everywhere universally. We're going to be facing the same issues. So I think having that shared experience and these sorts of conversations really help just to give ideas on what to do practically. And I know we've got some great people on the panel today specifically that I've talked to in the past, most of the guys here, and they've got some great ways and experience of doing that as well. So I think it'll be a great conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a great introduction to lead into the discussion today and introduce our guests for the session. So the kind of key question we're looking at as part of, so we're in the Be Ready kind of part of the ramp up campaign and kind of going through some of those points, and particularly talking about today the challenge of having the right tools, equipment, infrastructure in place, and kind of all of the things that support our operations. And we've got a great set of guests today, so I'll ask them to introduce who they are and where they work. So Harry, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Good morning everyone, my name is Harry. I'm the Safety and Compliance Manager based at London Oxford Airport. I also look after the London Heliport as well. And I've been in aviation now for coming on 18 years. I've worked at many different airports, Heathrow, London City, Birmingham, and now sort of taken the change over to business aviation. And that's me. Pleased to be here.
Fantastic, thanks. And Keiron, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Keiron McNeill. I'm the Chief Technical Officer for Loganair, based in Glasgow in Scotland. We're a regional airline currently operating pretty much intra-UK and small bits of Northern Europe.
Fantastic, thanks Keiron. And finally, Tim.
Last but not least. Good morning,
Exactly.
everyone. Yeah. My name is Tim. I'm the current safety manager of Munich Airport. I'm involved in aviation safety for almost 11 years now. Have worked for a big German airline which doesn't exist anymore, and then changed over to Munich Airport, where I'm now for 3 years.
Excellent.
And I think we've got, through our guests here, we've got a great spread of different experiences, and I guess we get straight into it. And perhaps, Harry, we can start with you. What's been the biggest kind of challenges you've had around kind of the infrastructure and all of the things around kind of the things that support your operation then? Can you tell us a bit about some of your challenges?
I think for us, I mean, I've been here now based out of London, Oxford for 10 months, and what was really apparent is space and hangarage and trying to get aircraft into hangars, and you know, it's an older airport. The infrastructure here is quite old, but what I have seen in 10 months I've been here is massive commitment from the management team in terms of developing the airport by building new hangars, building new infrastructure to make the day-to-day operation a lot safer. And how that, I think, that links in with the day-to-day operation is if we don't have the right infrastructure for staff to work around, and I think that's what leads to incidences. You know, we're a small airport, but we're very, very busy. We have 3 flight schools here. We have a number of MROs that are based out of Oxford, and our operation in general, BizJets, is only increasing. So I think the biggest thing for us is space and having the right infrastructure to house these aircraft.
Thanks for that insight, and maybe Keiron, I know it's been a challenging time for everybody. I'm really interested to hear more about what the situation's been like for you at Loganair.
Yeah, we operate quite a wide, certainly under my remit, it's four maintenance bases, you know, at times up to 13 line stations, etc. And almost as a leadership team, I know we're here to talk about tools and infrastructure, but actually we had to have a redecision of what our role in the business was to support the infrastructure, and we almost came to the opinion that it was to not reintroduce, but make sure kind of humanity was at the front of everything we do. So when we're talking about infrastructure and tools, what do they mean? And we've started coming up with some phrases like maintainer focused, user focused, people focused. So, you know, if we talk about tools, it's one thing to buy a tool for an individual. It's the second part to ensure you've put the proper training steps in place to make sure they know how to use it and are confident to use it. So I think we were quite linear in the past of if somebody needed the tool, you bought the tool. Now we've had to go back through different layers and look at our training team. How are they supporting the use of that tool? How are they supporting the individual being able to use the tool successfully? And then you branch out to infrastructure. And it's like peeling an onion apart. Every layer adds more complexity. So we then started looking at our kind of electronic infrastructure, and we realized very quickly that we had to move away from kind of legacy hardware systems to more cloud-based IT systems. So a lot of our key maintenance software now, we're moving on to things like, you know, the AWS platforms for cloud-based. And, you know, talking about humanity when you talk about tools and infrastructure seems like a disconnect, but actually our favourite strapline was remove frustration. Because with everything everyone's gone through the last 18 months, if you can remove some frustration, you're doing a very, very good job. And ultimately, that leads to safety. So when it comes to removing frustrations, kind of where I'm getting to is, if people have access to everything they need to do the job, tooling, documentation, and you can do it seamlessly, their stress levels and hence their safety awareness will kind of rebalance themselves. That's been our biggest, I think, that's been our biggest challenge, is to come away from a completely technical dog-eat-dog airline environment and actually have to move to a more people-based, people-focused place.
I love that you've actually implemented, well-being and people development and people training as part of the infrastructure, and I think that is missing in quite a lot of organisations. And so it's fantastic that you've actually implemented that.
That's interesting for me. Can everyone still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say we've implemented technology that it's not there yet. We've only just started, but we're on a path.
We're trying. Yeah.
Things like when you draw a tool out from stores, we now have a piece of software where you can generate a QR code, and you blip the QR code, and we'll have video content that tells the person how to use the tool.
Yeah.
So not everybody has to have a memory like an elephant. If you can't remember how to use the tool, blip a QR code and you'll have a 30-second, 60-second video clip telling you how to use the tool.
Amazing.
The movement from task cards, atypically in maintenance, silly A4 pieces of paper that are compliance tools, not safety tools. And we're now introducing digital interactive task cards, concentrating on the safety of how you do the job.
Fantastic.
Not the compliance bit of, put a stamp in a box and move on.
Yeah. I love it. And that's the way it should be, but it's
I think
difficult
it's really
for
good.
organisations to actually understand that.
But it's a mental process,
See,
not a physical
it's one of the
process.
interesting things.
Yeah. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you fine, Chris.
Sorry, I got a real lag on my line.
It's been interesting. We've been wrestling a lot with the challenge of we put this. Yeah, we can. The line seemed to go bad there for a second.
Yeah, John.
I think we lost John.
I think we lost
John's
John. I
frozen.
think there's a big lag.
Do you want to go? Do you want to go now, Chris?
Kieran.
Hopefully, we can fit you in, and the system will work fine.
Yeah, I'm really delighted to hear you talk about that, because ultimately, whatever the regulations say, they usually have an intent behind them in terms of the safety outcomes and the way the job is performed, the tasks performed, whether it's ground operations, flight operations, technical operations, and what for what you.
There is a time lag.
I'll carry on.
And here's the challenge of trying to do a
I'll
conversation.
carry on. Yeah, this is a tricky one, but I'll just make my comment and then hand back to John to see if we're okay technically. But what I think you described there, Kieran, is what I would describe. It's setting people up for success. Yeah, go ahead. If you log back in again. Yeah. Okay, I was just saying to Kieran, I was delighted to hear what he was talking about. For ultimately,
So we should be able to hear you fine, Chris. It's just once we put the pieces together,
people who are intending things to happen in terms of safe outcomes, but the interpretation of that, as Kieran was describing there, in terms of humans in systems and setting people up for success, is absolutely pivotal to making an operation run smoothly, be empathetic to people's needs, and really take out those frustrations so that they can focus on doing the job right and doing the right thing. And so that's really good to hear. And I'll just hand back to you now, John, to see if you've got any of that. Doesn't seem so. There's a huge lag in it.
I think we got all of it. One of the
Can we move
joys
on
of
then?
this system, although
Kieran, that's
there
amazing
seems to
you're
be
doing
a
that
lag
within
in
an
general.
airline. Tim, are you doing anything similar within an airport? Is there what kind of infrastructure are you going under?
Yes, I think the current situation is a good example of what our greatest challenge was during all the pandemic situation. It was to have like a very, very complex system linked to many, many companies, with airlines coming to an airport, ground service providers working at the airport company itself. So all these companies had to be involved in the restart process, and you had to look at the infrastructure, the tools and the equipment, and also human factors and organization. And on the other hand, you have been doing this in a very challenging environment, like online, like okay, yeah, you're doing this in a very challenging environment, like we are doing it at the moment. So you do it online in online meetings with different companies using different tools to connect to. Trying to present something online, people not seeing it, people not being able to connect yourself to these systems, and that was one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
Okay.
We get that.
Yeah.
Right. So bottom line was for us.
Definitely got the lag.
Yes,
Yeah.
at the airport.
I just
I
messaged
have
him to
absolutely
say,
no
like,
idea whether
you're the
you
one
can
on the
hear me
line,
not,
so
or
he
not
said,
now.
"Oh, okay, keep it running, and then he'll catch up afterwards." So
Okay.
sorry, Tim. Can you
Go ahead,
carry
yeah,
on,
please.
please?
No worries. That's exactly what happened all the past months and all the time when we tried to organize our restart process and to get all the action items and mitigation measures and everything in place and to discuss them and to structure them and to document them. That it was really challenging. On the one hand, to handle this complex system for restart, and on the other hand, to do this in a new environment. You never did this before, like doing it online with all the different companies. And sometimes some companies just sent their people home and you didn't have any contact person at the company and you couldn't reach somebody just to organize this restart process. That was really challenging for us with all the complexity. As EASA has good rules for airport, but has no rules for like ground service provider or catering or fueling or everything. So it was solely
Challenging.
based on the airport at the end to have the overview over all these different companies and processes to reconnect together in a restart process.
That's a really interesting way of thinking about it because, yeah, we're talking about how all these infrastructures relate to safety, but if there's no real guidelines for it, you've got to start from scratch. So did you do anything internally, or did you actually look for advice from outside of the airport, or how did you go around actually fixing that problem?
Well, we set up like 3 working groups to address all the different companies because we found out that we cannot put them all in one working group because it's just too big to have like 50, 60 people in this group. So we had one internal working group for focusing on our internal infrastructure and the marking, lighting, ILS systems and everything. We had one external working group with all the service providers, supporting them to restart their own organization or their own restart process in terms of tools and training and everything. And we had one like high-level working group with the airlines, with the ATC, which was mainly focusing on the interfaces between these organizations, because we had a lot of information that had to flow from one company to another, and it's not just easy. If somebody is not working anymore in this company or was sent home, you just don't get the information at the end, and you don't know if the flight is coming tomorrow or if it's not coming tomorrow. So that was kind of a challenging situation. Was it the same with you, Harry, in Oxford?
So for us, we were in a very different situation. During the pandemic, we actually were very busy. I think the commercial airports were hit harder, whereas the general aviation industry continued operating, and business jets were flying. So for us, it's been the opposite. We've had to maintain an operation during the pandemic and operate safely. So a complete opposite to what you experienced, Tim. So we've been focused on ongoing compliance monitoring, ongoing safety inspections within the apron area, and at the same time we've built a brand new hangar that can house 6 global jets, which is going to be handed over to us in about 3 weeks' time. And there's ongoing development works at the airport that we've been working on quite hard in the background during the pandemic. So it's a different story for general aviation compared to the commercial world.
Absolutely.
The biggest challenge.
No, I saw that. I drove past your.
Sorry, Keiron, you go first.
Okay, sorry.
So one of the challenges compared to what Tim faced is we need to recruit and we need to bring extra bodies in, and as we get busier, our departments are growing. But during the pandemic, a lot of people that may have worked in aviation historically and have been furloughed and decided not to come back to aviation because they've seen a different world out there. They don't want to come back and work shift work. They don't want to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and be here at 5. They're happy to work now Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, because they have a better quality of life. They've got their work-life balance and sorted and are happy with that. And they decide not to come back to aviation. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing at the moment, is trying to get the right people in the right place with the right experience. So again, going back to tools, infrastructure, I think staffing levels are also a big issue at the moment for a lot of aerodromes. We just simply can't get the people in the right jobs, in the right roles.
That, what you said there, is something that's
So I'm going to throw out and see if I'm back in the room now.
You seem to be.
Excellent. There we go. It's interesting how we were we've been talking about the challenges of tools and technology and all of these things, and it shows the reality of these challenging situations we find ourselves in, and trying to even do something like this shows the challenges of the conversation. So it's been fantastic to hear the different kind of inputs and what you were saying there, Harry, at that last part about the challenges that you have of trying to recruit people. And I think that comes back also to what Tim and Keiron were saying, particularly about the people side of the ramp up, and that if you just have that scientific approach to the technology and the tools and the equipment, and you don't think about the people, it doesn't become an attractive place to work for people. And that's equally I think quite the challenge that people are trying to solve.
Yeah, I'm just interested. Obviously, there's a lot of investment being going on there at London Oxford, Harry, with what you described with new hangars and things like that. A lot of investment gone in. And I wonder, with Keiron, what you were talking about, some of the infrastructure and systems you've been putting in to make it better for people to do their job and take away those frustrations. That's probably, I'm imagining, quite a big investment as well. So I wondered, in terms of risk management and looking at a holistic view of an operation, did that come up for you as a high risk area in terms of investment? How did you sort of justify that to get that change?
I think we justified it because, firstly, I think it slapped us in the face that we had to change. We had to adopt and adapt new practices. So things like the capital expenditure for moving to cloud-based systems. Historically, the engineers would go to fixed desktops to gain access to technical documentation, regulatory documentation. They're now driving around with 4G enabled Surface Go platform units that we've had to purchase. It's like I said, we had to justify the capital expenditure at a time when most airlines were hemorrhaging money. Exactly. But in order to run an airline and run a successful business in the new world where people want a more flexible approach, like Harry says, people are now looking for a flexible, work-life balance orientated career in aviation, and if we don't give it to them, then they will find a different industry. So you have to change your platforms to people being able to work from home, change the working hours in which some people can work. Connectivity is a big issue, and yes, we had capital conversations on topics we didn't have before. But I think whether you're looking at aviation or every other kind of I call it a major industry in the UK, everybody's having the same staff retention issues. All staff want that new world approach to work-life balance, and it's the usual thing. If you don't evolve, you will die. And an airline without staff is defunct. So we have spent heavily. Everything from fully electronic tech-log technology on our aircraft to making sure our engineers are 4G enabled wherever they walk, soon to be 5G enabled, and our support staff who tend to be the ones, to be fair, that want the more flexible approach because they are office-based predominantly, not shift workers. They have to have the ability to be connected to the company systems, still maintain security, but work from their sofa. And then mentally, as a leadership team, you have to get over, from an infrastructure point of view, having a very expensive office building with 20% occupancy. So if you talk infrastructure, the upside may well be a shift in capital that's invested in bricks and mortar because you need less staff on site, but an upshift in your expenditure on data accessibility, secure IT security, stuff like that. So it's been a real 180 kind of shift in modal operations, but it's been positive. It's been positive. It's just getting your head around it.
It's good to actually mention that though, because
Fantastic.
especially for a lot of people who have been on furlough or have been away, they might, a lot of people, we all look at ourselves in our own niches and are quite single-minded sometimes. So it's good to have that understanding that it's for looking into the future, it's for everybody coming back, and it's for more of a global operation. So now that we're coming to the end, can I maybe just ask each of you to give like a 30-second quick advice from your experiences of last year, or for anybody else out there, any other organisations, given the fact that you're from an airline, airport, or general aviation. 30 seconds each, and maybe just see what we can help others with. Would that be okay? Keiron, can you go first, since you've already touched on quite a lot already?
I know, sorry. I think for me it's just in engineering certainly, and in the airlines, compliance is the lowest acceptable standard. So to pump all of your brain power and capital into compliance, I think, is not future-proofing. So technologies that support your staff and removing frustrations will have a real-world safety and financial impact. That's kind of a 30-second soundbite into 18 months of conversations.
That's perfect. Thank you, Keiron. Tim?
Spot on.
Well, as I just mentioned, for me, the complexity was the most challenging thing in the pandemic. And on the other hand, I want to say that you don't have to fear this complexity. So if you break this down to specific areas, if you talk to the right people, if you set up the meetings, you can get all these, like the big amount of things to do. You can structure this, and you can do this, and you can develop plans and actions and mitigation strategies, and you can be very good prepared to be in the restart process and be ahead of things that can happen. On the other hand, you will miss things, and that's absolutely okay. So you can plan so much ahead, but at the end you will miss things. And on the other hand, it's very important to be out, like on an airport, be out on the apron, do your safety inspections, have a look at your safety management system, like your reporting system or your safety performance indicators, to monitor very closely if you see some things rising up in some area that you might not have thought of in the planning process. That's absolutely okay, but you should be in the process of being in the restart process, and not just lean back and say, okay, we are now moving back to the normal operation. Be out there and have your eyes open.
Thank you. And lastly, Harry.
Yeah, just echoing on really from Tim's comments, very similar. I mean, for us, it's been a very busy 18 months. Like I said, the flight levels were at our highest, and lots of development work. But one thing I would like to say is that don't be afraid to hit the reset button, even if you are busy. One of the areas of concern during the last 18 months was occurrence reporting, and staffing our understanding of what they should be reporting within their remits. And we actually hit the reset button here, and we took everybody through SMS training again, every single department, and that was during the last 18 months of operation. And more so the last 8 months that I've been here, everybody's had retraining, and what we have seen is an increase in occurrence reporting, which actually demonstrates to me that actually a safety culture here has taken a shift from where it was in a positive manner. So if you're busy, that doesn't mean that there's no ongoing training that needs to be done. We need to keep reviewing where you are as an organisation, as a team. I think it was really, really important. I think Keiron has touched on that topic in terms of technology. So I think, don't be afraid to hit the reset button sometimes. Just because you've been doing something a certain way for, X amount of years doesn't mean it's time that you can't sit down and actually change the way that you do things. There's no harm in doing that at all.
Bravo.
That's some really good advice from
Brilliant.
all of you. This has actually been amazing conversations. I really appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. Chris, have you got anything else to add?
And I think that all leads in really, really nicely. I was just going to say, it kind of wraps really nicely into then next week's discussion, where we're going to talk then about how we put people and their well-being at the heart of a people-centred ramp-up.
So, I just want to say thank you to everybody. You can still hear
Claudio, can you hear us?
I could hear
Because
John.
I can hear John.
I can hear John.
Yeah.
Or maybe Claudio, you're the one that's
I'm on lag.
now got the lag. Well, I think we learnt a lot about the technology here and our own infrastructure challenges. So, yeah,
thank you very much, everybody.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your involvement, for bearing with the technology, and I'll hit the stop button now, and we'll say goodbye to everybody.
Bye-bye.